Herbert's 100 Harem. In the end, the seaquakes were both the easiest and most annoying to deal with. The skittish things were being chased all over the place, and while he could easily sneak up on them, there were just far too many hunters more making a game out of spooking the poor animals than actually hunting. The badly mangled seaquake gets put in storage for him to eat later, and maybe share with the guys on the Dauntless, as the girls aren't fond of it. Another for study, and 3 more for the resorts. Those ones pay off the cost of their stay after all. While their resort is very well put together, it's just a smaller piece of a larger chain. The whole thing is maintained by the local equivalent of Roombas, and the little maintenance drones kept everything up and running, and the greeter Scorchin did her little introduction spiel to dozens of groups a day, each on their own little islands full of music and relaxation. It was like having a private resort, but it was also cheap due to there just being so many. The really expensive ones served the seaquakes to eat, and having several of them nice and early in the hunting season would allow someone to feast on their soon-to-be targets the moment they arrive, and some great hunters love to do that. The mental image of the quintessential rich asshole needs some adjustment, as the galaxy equivalent would be a young-looking woman who's likely going to eye-fuck him if he enters her sight line, and perhaps comparing him to her boy-toy husband. The worst of all this, though, was the fact that many of the tourists were just watching him as if he were local entertainment rather than a serious hunter. Which is why his next seaquake would be his last, as having not only a few dozen people watching him and muttering as he tries to sneak up on a skittish and dangerous animal, but also the fact that they have drones zoomed in on him is just annoying, especially as several different makes of drones have a type of buzzing sound that is being picked up by the seaquake and agitating it, making it harder to sneak up on. He had managed to get a slight turn of current to bring him closer, despite holding his knife and drifting closer and closer. "He's doing it!" one of the girls exclaims, and the eyes swivel to regard the women before twitching all over the place and then catching sight of him. His axiom presence is beyond minimal. The sediments under the creature have more power running through them, and it stares at him for a bit. At this range, he can tell it's not actually a googly eye, but an immensely dense compound eye that has a film with 2 types of fluid in it. One transparent, the other darker and unable to mix together. The darker fluid is clearly heavier and sinks to the bottom, but globs together as a ball. He considers why such a thing would happen, and concludes it must be filtering some kind of light in a different way than the transparent fluid to help it find things to scavenge and eat. Then the eye turns away and looks upwards again and around. "Time's up, creature. You had your chance and dismissed the real threat as a chunk of drifting debris." He wonders vaguely if it thought him as seaweed or some kind of driftwood chunk. No matter what it considers him, the knife plunges in, and the kill is clean. The crowd cheers as he quickly pulls a bit of cord from his pouch and ties up the dead seaquake. He clips the other end around his belt and starts to swim upwards. 3 aka. One of them a shark-based type, the other 2 seem to be some kind of silver fish, a lydris, several mera, 2 hydronegasha, and a wimparas, all swim up to him. He starts channeling axiom, and starts warming up a fair amount, and conjures a healthy amount of atmosphere around his head so he can hang his rebreather off his belt. I'm afraid this is the end of the show, ladies. I'm near the end of a long, strange hunting trip designed to teach me. We head out shortly for another world after this, another prey that needs another method to attack and hunt, he says as he continues rising upwards. He pokes the recall button on the rebreather to call the skiff to help him take his last prize back. With this last quake, the resort technically owes them money, but a nice little flourish in the legal wording of the bounty assignment means the most he's getting out of this is a few specialist drinks or meals instead of actual credits. The good hunters got their vacations for free, something he technically qualified for now. Such a shame we can't talk you into staying on Parado longer. My mother actually owns more than a few of the island chains herself. We could work out an arrangement, married man or not. The Wimpara's girls offers him. Major downside of the galaxy is that even the excuse "I'm married" doesn't work for diverting attention. At least, not to the really thirsty ones. Although he supposed that happened on Earth as well, he wouldn't know. He hadn't been popular with the ladies before. So what do you think? The lobster centaur woman asks, and Herbert resists rolling his eyes. As I've said before, my vacation is limited. I have duties. I have responsibilities, and they can only be set aside for so long. He answers. This world will not be good for recruiting. The people here are either living drones who just go through the daily motions, schmoozers, opportunists, or their children. It would be a bad idea to have recruiting office on Parado, and just as bad an idea to set up a training center on World as well. There was just too high a likelihood of civilians coming over to take a peek and possibly finding themselves in the line of fire. The last thing a military base needs is an overfed idiot wandering into a shooting range while the weapons are hot. Not only is it absolute garbage for morale, training, and reputation, but it opens the base up to being sued as well. And why do you have to go back? Handsome man like you shouldn't have to work. It's a big, scary galaxy out there, and there are more than enough women to hold the line. She tries to ply him, and he feels something inside himself tense. And you have officially crossed the line, lady. I'm willing to take a lot of insults, but the idea that I won't fulfill my duties or responsibilities is just plain vile. This conversation is over, and the sooner I'm off this planet and away from it, the better. He barely resists snarling and channels a huge amount of axiom to propel himself upwards, taking advice from the chattering and nattering of the nerd squad to pull the water down on him and rocket upwards more akin to a jet engine. It was how most of them were flying these days if they weren't conjuring things to surf on. He says nothing to the crowd around him as he ties the seaquake up to the skiff's winch and then climbs up and in. It takes less than a minute to secure his final hunt and flies back to the resort. Visibly ignoring the protests of the many women around him, but actually paying a great deal of attention as the conversation goes from incredulous to upset to furiously berating the Wimpara's girl. Her reputation has gone down the toilet, and before he flies away, she swims off in a furious huff. And just like that, he's shattered the cohesion of a group and set that girl into a shifting change in her patterns. He types a note on his communicator for the Wimpara's Urzuba long drift to be watched for changes in behavior. The psychology of the aliens does need to be studied, and you never know when someone may be of use. After all, while Parado might be a terrible place to recruit soldiers, spies are of a very different make, and the serving staff and owners having their ears open at a luxury resort might be all kinds of useful, might be nothing. It will be a benefit. The more fingers they have on the varied pulses of the galaxy, the better. Still, from a mild humiliation, Urzuba will likely be even more eager to conquer a human, and that will give them a fairly hefty way in on Parado. Once they're on the ground and whispering in the ear of the heiress of one of the major 5 resort chains on the world, they can then move in on the others. Not a recruitment point, but certainly a place to be of use. Of course, every and any planet, space station, and the like could be used as such. Literally every ship around could have such a purpose. Something for later. Something for later. Everything all right? Isma asks as he comes in with the seaquake. Just some of the locals not really listening when I tell them that I'm married or have a job, he replies. Had the woman eyebrows, one would be raised. What did you do? She asks him, and he gives her an evil smile. Do we have to leave the planet? Oh no, nothing of the sort, but I appreciate the vote of confidence, he says. Mr. Jameson, she states. Yes? He asks. He can tell she's fighting a smile. What did you do? Planted a few seeds, nothing more. Have you seduced some poor young lady? Not technically, he answers. "What did you do, young man? Weren't you watching through the goggle camera?" he asks, pulling up the goggles to rest on his forehead. "I was, but it doesn't show your face or how you managed to get that kind of reaction from the women. Just what was your expression when they told you to run away with them?" she asks, and he sighs. "I was channeling Axiom at the time. No doubt what I truly thought of that was coming through hard and heavy, letting them know even more than my words, tone, or face that they crossed lines that there was no coming back from," he replies. "You did more than that, though. Miss Longdrift may or may not recover in such a way as to be trivial for another agent to seduce later," Herbert admits. "Are you ever not working?" Yzma asks, and he shrugs. "Most of it is habit now. Don't tell me that you don't casually know the best spots to ambush from in every room you walk into," he replies, and there's a huff of amusement. "You're just as much a threat to people as to beasts, aren't you?" she asks, and he nods. "We'll see how well you do against the next big target then. The Jalik of planet Jalik, big honking tropical birds, sky blue on the underside, and every color of the rainbow on top. Ambush predators faster than sound, capable of bending time to catch prey and smart enough to adapt, learn, and overcome. They're also as large as your average starship, if not larger." He notes before considering. "It'll be a hell of a feast. But just to be sure, they're not becoming people, are they? We've got a good 10 to 12 more generations before that happens." Yzma assures him, and he frowns before considering. "The Jalik reproduce once every 10 years. You're telling me that within a century? Within what I can honestly expect is my own lifetime now, these creatures will become people?" he asks, and she gives him an odd look. "Perhaps. But the question is, does it matter?" she asks, slowly pacing around him. He's still in the skiff, but feeling as if he himself is being hunted. The conversation has turned, and massively so. Of course it matters. They're so close to being people that at this point it's closer to murder. Their loved ones will grieve, their children will be adopted by others, and their community will be harmed. They are still beasts, though. No language to unify them. Not even fire is theirs," she returns. "Someone being a fool doesn't mean they're without worth. The Jingay of the Nagasha are treasured by their families regardless of their challenges." He remarks, and Yzma straight up climbs onto the skiff and regards him from above. "It is odd that you would oppose murder. You, an assassin, a killer for hire. When you played Deathstroke on Skathak, it fit you like a glove. You have a vicious streak, one that sees you all but exulting when you get a chance to fight. I know you've killed before. Do you think that your enemies do not have families and children of their own, friends and loved ones? Those that rely on them simply as a customer, or perhaps just a smile during a dark day? What's the difference?" "I will kill in the line of duty, but never for pleasure," he says. "I don't have an issue taking lives when I have to. The people I've killed will not be mourned by me even if they are mourned by others. But invading the home of a beast on the cusp of becoming a person, slaughtering them just for a meal or a trophy? No, I will not." "Good," Yzma says. "Very good. So this is the last stop?" he asks. "No, we're still going to Jalik, and you're still going to be with the Jalik birds." "To do what?" "You're going to learn from them, learn to move with them and tame them. I told you that human hunting animals had my interest. Here is where it culminates. You can fight against nature. You can break it, you can trick it. Can you work with it?"